Hare Krishna everyone, welcome back to our daily study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll chant the prayers first. Om Jnana Timinandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Padamayam Tadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shweta Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sargajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Shri Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutite Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhischa Kripasindhubheva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Guru Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Vishnu Pati Vishnu 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 Krishna Hare Krishna. So we are in 10th canto, chapter number 20, the rainy season and autumn in Vrindavan. So we studied the translation and we discussed the 15th verse yesterday. Today we'll study similar way. So we did the 15th, 16th verse onwards. During the rainy season, 16th verse, 10, 20, 10th canto, 20th chapter, 16th verse. During the rainy season, the roads not being cleansed became covered with grass and debris and were thus difficult to make out. These roads were like religious scriptures that Brahmanas no longer study and that thus become corrupted and covered over with the passage of time. Next, though the clouds are the well-wishing friends of all living beings, the lightning, fickle in its affinities, move from one group of clouds to another, like lusty women, unfaithful even to virtuous men. Next was, when the curved bow of Indra, the rainbow, appeared in the sky, which had the quality of thundering sound, it was unlike ordinary bows because it did not rest upon a string. Similarly, when the Supreme Lord appears in this world, which is the interaction of the material qualities, he is unlike ordinary persons because he remains free from all material qualities and independent of all material conditions. 19th verse translation. During the rainy season, the moon was prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the clouds, which were themselves illuminated by the moon's rays. Similarly, the living entity being in material existence is prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the false ego, which is itself illuminated by the consciousness of the pure soul. Purport. The analogy given here is excellent. During the rainy season, we cannot see the moon in the sky because the moon is covered by clouds. These clouds, however, are radiant with the glow of the moon's own rays. Similarly, in our conditioned material existence, we cannot directly perceive the soul because our consciousness is covered by the false ego, which is the false identification with the material world and the material body. Yet it is the soul's own consciousness that illumines the false ego. As the Gita describes, the energy of the soul is consciousness, and when this consciousness manifests through the sense screen of false ego, it appears as dull material consciousness. As the Gita describes, the energy of the soul is consciousness, and when this consciousness manifests through the screen of false ego, it appears as dull material consciousness, in which there is no direct vision of the soul or God. In the material world, even great philosophers ultimately resort to hazy ambiguities when speaking about the absolute truth. Just as the cloudy sky manifests only in a dull and indirect way, the iridescent light of the moon. In material life, our false ego is often enthusiastic, hopeful, and apparently aware of various material affairs. And such consciousness encourages us to push on in material existence. But in truth, we are merely experiencing dull reflection of our original pure consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness, direct possession of the soul and God. Not realizing that the false ego merely hampers Not realizing that the false ego merely hampers and dulls our real spiritual consciousness, which is fully enlightened and blissful, we mistakenly think that material consciousness is full of knowledge and happiness. This is comparable to thinking that the luminous clouds are lighting up the night sky, while in fact it is the moonshine that illumines the sky and the clouds that merely dull and hamper the moonshine. The clouds appear luminous because they are filtering and impeding the brilliant rays of the moon. Similarly, at times, material consciousness appears pleasurable or enlightened because it is screening or filtering the original blissful and enlightened consciousness coming directly from the soul. If we can understand the ingenious analogy given in this verse, we can easily advance in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. So we have already chanted the prayers, so we will discuss. So what is mentioned in this particular translation? During the rainy season, the moon. So when it is rainy season, it's cloudy. The sky is cloudy. So the moon and other luminous objects like stars, they are covered by the clouds. So it doesn't appear. We cannot see that, which are themselves illuminated by the moon's rays. So the moon's ray, though the clouds cover the moons, but the rays of the due to the rays of the same moon, which is covered by the clouds become illuminated. Similarly, the living entity in material existence is prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the false ego. So, living entities, Jivatma also have their original consciousness, which is covered by this false ego. This is a covering of the original consciousness, which is itself illuminated by the consciousness of pure soul. So, living entity is alive, living entity is conscious because of the presence of this soul. But the soul, the characteristics of the or the actual nature of the soul is actually covered because of the false ego. However, we cannot do anything without the presence of the soul. So, that's why it's mentioned the living entity in material existence is prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the false ego, which is itself illuminated by the consciousness of the pure soul. Because of the pure soul, presence of the pure soul, the living entity is illuminated or is alive. And then the purport Prabhupada is mentioning the analogy in detail that how we cannot see the moon during the cloudy season or rainy season because it is covered by the clouds. And these clouds, however, are radiant with the glow of the moon's own rays. Similarly, in the conditioned state, like right now we are in a conditioned state, our pure consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness, is covered by false ego. So we are in a conditioned, we are said to be conditioned souls. So in our conditioned state, our actual actual consciousness, that is Krishna consciousness of the pure soul is covered, and we misidentify ourselves with this material body, isn't it? It's actually even a layman can understand that when the dead body is lying, we say, he has left. So who has left? The body is still lying there. So it's a spirit soul. So we, in one sense, we have this understanding that the soul and the living entity, the soul and the body are different, but it is in the subconscious way we have that, because that's how we say when the dead body is lying, we say he's left. Who has left? So that's the presence of the soul has left the body, so that's why the person is dead. And it is very easy to understand this from this basic, very simple example, isn't it? But still, we keep identifying with our body, with our near and dear ones, with our nation, with our society, and so on. So it's all because of the covering, because of being covered by false ego. And then Prabhupada, the devotees, disciples of Prabhupada mentioned that as it is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, that the energy, the symptom of the soul is what? Consciousness. The proof of the presence of the soul is that the living entity is conscious. So the soul is present. And this the energy of the soul is consciousness, and when this consciousness manifests through the screen of false ego, it appears as dull material consciousness. So though we are pure spirit souls, we are actually originally Krishna conscious, but because our because we are covered by this false ego, so the the consciousness which becomes manifest is the material consciousness, because we are covered by this false ego. So once this false ego is removed, then our actual original the nature of the living entity or the pure spirit soul, that is Krishna consciousness, can become manifest immediately. So so when we are actually seeing in the mirror, we are not actually seeing ourselves, but we are seeing the body, the covering of the soul. We're not seeing the soul as it is, but we are seeing the covering of the body. So we are thinking this is me. But again, um, because because I mean, logically or just we think deep, we still have the understanding that I'm not this body. How, when we say point to your, we say it is my hand. Let's this example also we can take. We say it's my hand. This is my eyes. This is my nose. My house. We don't say I, the hand, because so who is that my, who is that me? That is the living entity, that is a jivatma, that's a pure spirit soul. And when and yes, Gurudev mentions having done, I mean, some kind of experiment, like if you ask a group of people, point to your nose, point to your eyes, point to your hands, point to your legs, point to yourself, then we point towards here, because the spirit soul is actually seated in this portion of the body. The spirit soul is seated along with the super soul is seated here at the position of the heart. So this is how we understand that the body and the soul are actually different, and because this pure spirit soul is covered by material false ego, so what becomes manifest? Material consciousness. The our present consciousness is what? Contaminated consciousness. Just like there's a bulb and you place a colored screen in front of it, so the light which you will get in the room is the colored light. Similarly, the pure spirit soul is there, and there is this covering of false ego. So what becomes manifest is contaminated consciousness or material consciousness, because of the influence of the false ego. And in material life, actually, um, false ego is very much, is often considered, is good, in the sense we should feel ourselves um, capable of doing it. Hope I can do it, and you have the capability, you have that kind of push, and so-called encouragement. But actually, uh, in Krishna consciousness, what do we do? We if you see the prayers of the different acharyas in the Vaishnava song book, Kichu nahi muro guna. There is a one of the Vaishnava acharyas in the Vaishnava song mentions Kichu nahi muro guna. So I don't have any good qualities. So they repeatedly mention in different Vaishnava songs that actually I'm so condemned, I'm so fallen, I'm so much full of anarthas, and there's no way I can ever get rescued. But kindly, you can do everything, so kindly have mercy on me. So a devotee puts all confidence on Krishna and no confidence on oneself, that I cannot do anything, I am just a insignificant living entity, and that too I'm covered with this material consciousness and have come under the grip of this material energy. Senses are always wild, looking for sense gratification. Mind is always bewildered, here and there, and so there is it is so difficult in this material consciousness. But you can do, no, Guru and Krishna, they by their mercy, one can even, a lame man can even cross over the mountain, a dumb man can give eloquent speech. It is possible. That is mood of a devotee. So anyways, coming back to the purport, what we experience presently, I mean the consciousness, that is material consciousness, whereas it's a kind of perverted reflection of our original consciousness, or Krishna consciousness. Original consciousness is Krishna consciousness. So actually every living entity is actually pure devotee of Krishna. Why? Because they are all jivatmas, they are all coming from Krishna, they are all part and parcels of Krishna. In the pure state, they are all pure devotees of the Lord. But because they've forgotten that, and are covered by this false ego, they misidentify themselves with this material body and therefore are suffering. Just like in the 15th chapter, Krishna says, Mamevamsha Jivaloke Jivabhuta. So, Jivabhutam. Yes, ममैवांश जीवलोके जीवभूत सनातन मनसष्टानीन्द्रियाणि प्रकृतिस्थानि कर्षति. They are all struggling with this six senses, which is the mind, but actually they are all, I mean, we are all parts and parcels of Krishna. Yes, so because our nature is what Anandamayo Vyasat. That is the nature of the Supreme Lord, and being parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, we also have the same qualities in minute quantities. So our nature is also to enjoy. We want Ananda, bliss. Now, as Gurudev mentions that we have been down from so long that it appears to be up. So, what does it mean? That because we are pleasure seekers by nature, pure spirit soul is always in Ananda. So we have that pleasure seeking tendency, but because of being in this material world, which is said to be dukkhalayam ashashvatam, there is only dukkha, there is only misery in this material world. So now because right now we do not have any access to the spiritual world, and before coming to Krishna consciousness, we practically did not know anything about the spiritual world. So, being in the material world, experiencing all kind of misery, distress, and everything, but still we try to find happiness in amongst all that. Why? Because that is our nature. We are supposed to be happy. We are supposed to be blissful. So we try to find happiness in this material world. Try to make some arrangements, some patchwork kind of activities, just like modern scientific technologies. Scientists, they claim to be advanced, to be advancing. So by making these skyscrapers, flyovers, so many comfort, luxurious vehicles and luxurious facilities, they think that we are advancing, but actually we are not. So, but this is an example of how in the material consciousness we try to find happiness, we try to seek happiness because that tendency is there. So, this is comparable to thinking that luminous clouds are lighting up the night sky. So, now, a foolish person may think that when the moon is covered by the clouds, and because of the presence of the moon, the cloud appears to be illuminated somewhat. And now a foolish person may think that this cloud is actually the giving light in the to the sky. The cloud is actually illuminating the sky. And so that is foolish. No? That's why it's mentioned this is comparable to thinking that luminous clouds are lighting up night sky, which in fact, while in fact it is the moonshine that illuminates the sky, illumines the sky. So clouds have no role in it, but actually it's because of the moon the sky is illuminated. But because they have covered the moon, the clouds have covered the moon, so the cloud becomes like just like you have a bulb or some luminous object and cover it with some cloth, so it seems that the cloth is illuminated. So similarly the cloud seems to be illuminated, and the less intelligent men think that the cloud is illumining the sky, whereas it is actually the sun. In the same way, the material consciousness is not all in all, but actually it's a pure, because the presence of the pure spirit soul, that the all activities are possible. Just like, but just by the presence of this body, we cannot do anything because it's a dull matter. Mm. So the credit actually goes to the pure spirit soul. Um, Okay, so similar way, material consciousness, it appears to be pleasurable and lightened, because it is actually filtering, or it is like a screen in front of the original consciousness, which is actually the original consciousness, the spirit soul. Nature of the spirit soul is what? Satchidananda. We are all Satchidananda, so eternal, blissful, full of knowledge and full of bliss. So that the poverty reflection of that is material consciousness. It is actually reverse asat, achit, Satchidananda, asat, achit, and nirananda. But still we try to find pleasure. So if we can understand all this analogy very well, then we can easily advance in Krishna consciousness, understanding, realizing that why are we I mean, if we see our own nature in very small things, if we notice, we have all these tendencies that we do not want to die, we want all knowledge, we are always seeking ananda. Why it is happening? Why do we have these tendencies? Because that is a nature. The dharma, just like the dharma of sugar is sweet, you cannot expect sugar to be salty. So in the same way, this is the nature of the living entity, which cannot be separated from the living entity. So if we can understand this and take it fully, with full acceptance, we uh, we we come to the point of realizing this thing, then we can actually be advanced in Krishna consciousness. So this is what is mentioned in this verse. Also, the pure spirit soul um, is being part and parcel of Krishna. That's why Krishna in the seventh chapter says that he says about the uh, material elements like earth, water, fire, ether, all these eight primary material elements are earth, water, fire, ether, air, and this mind, intelligence, and false ego. But then he says there's a superior energy of mind who are exploiting this inferior energy. So that superior energy is referring to the Jivatma. So we can understand we are actually belonging to the superior energy because we are all spiritual beings. But because we are trying to exploit the material energy for our sense gratification, we are presently in bondage. We are bound up in the cycle of birth and death. So, okay, we'll stop here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, we stop here. Hare Krishna.